The prisoner and the strange battlefield had gone silent, but the sky still burned. Fires danced in the wreckage of shattered dropships, and broken towers leaned like dying trees. Ash fell from above like dirty snow. Somewhere in that ruined city, among the corpses of machines and the bones of soldiers, a single figure knelt in chains, not dead, not quite alive. Her name was Sailor. She was of the Mirakai, a race known across the stars for their sleek star cruisers, their precision, fighters, and their pride. Once a royal guard, now just another enemy captive. Her arms were tied behind her back with tight cord that bit into her violet skin. Her knees pressed into cracked ferrocrete, blood smeared beneath them. Her silver hair hung in tangled strands, coated in soot and dried sweat. Her eyes, sharp even in pain, stared at the dirt, waiting, expecting. Across from her stood the human, silent, still. He was tall, wrapped in damaged tactical armor. His helmet was off, clipped to his hip. His face was scarred, weathered by too many battles, yet his eyes didn't match the rest. They weren't cruel, just tired. He didn't speak, didn't raise his weapon. He simply watched her, not like prey, but like a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Sailor braced herself. She had heard what humans did to captured Mirakai. No mercy, no trial. Humans didn't forgive. They survived, they won, and they buried their enemies beneath the ash. She tilted her chin up, gritted her teeth, and whispered, "Do it." The human blinked. "Do what?" "End it," she hissed. "Isn't that why you're here? To finish what your bombs didn't?" He looked at her for a long moment, then slowly slung his rifle behind his back and knelt in front of her. Sailor tensed. His hand went to a pouch at his waist. She flinched, ready for a blade. But instead, he pulled out a small water pack. He placed it on the ground near her knees and backed away. Her brows furrowed. "What game is this?" "No game," he replied. "You looked thirsty." She stared at the pack, then back at him. "You don't even know my name." "True," he said. "But I know what it's like to kneel in dirt, waiting to die." For a while, neither of them moved. The fires crackled behind them. The wind howled through hollow buildings. Sailor's mind raced. This had to be some trick, some strange interrogation tactic. But then again, wouldn't he have already hurt her? If that was the goal. She leaned down awkwardly and sipped from the water pouch. It was warm, metallic, and the most refreshing thing she'd tasted in days. "You're not like the others," she muttered. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not." He walked a few steps away and began clearing a space near a broken wall. Sailor watched as he gathered scraps of wood, twisted plastic, and metal shards. Soon, a small fire sparked to life. The heat touched her skin, and she felt it. The first comfort since her capture. "You're not afraid I'll escape?" she asked. "Where would you go?" He said, tossing a small ration bar into her lap. "The city's dead," she bit off a piece, chewing slowly. "You're helping me." "Why?" He didn't look at her when he answered. "Because I was supposed to kill you. And I couldn't." Sailor tilted her head. "Couldn't, or wouldn't." He turned then, locking eyes with her. Both. Night fell slowly over the ruins. The stars above were hidden behind smoke, and the world felt small and quiet. The fire between them popped, casting orange light over his weathered features and her chained form. She hated that it made her feel safer. "My name is Sailor," she said suddenly. "Mirakai Royal Guard, or was." The human nodded. "Name's Corrin. Just a sergeant. Nothing fancy. Sergeant Corrin," she repeated, letting the words roll across her tongue like strange fruit. "Strange name, strange world," he said. Later, as the fire burned lower, he stood and walked toward her. She tensed again, but this time he simply crouched behind her and cut the cords at her wrists. Her arms dropped free, tingling with returning blood flow. She didn't run, didn't fight. "You're letting me go." "I'm giving you a choice," he said. "Same one I never got." She rubbed her wrists and looked at him, puzzled. You were captured. No, he replied, throwing another log on the fire. But I was trained to follow orders. No questions, no mercy. I did things I still see when I close my eyes. Until one day I couldn't do it anymore. And your people let you just stop. He gave a dry laugh. No, they called it treason. Sailor stared into the flames, her thoughts louder than the wind. This human was dangerous, not because of his weapons, but because he made her doubt what she knew. I shot one of yours once, she said softly. On the edge of the nearest fields, he was trying to shield a group of Mirikai civilians. I shot him anyway. Corin didn't respond right away. Then he said, "Do you regret it?" "I don't know," she whispered. He tossed her a small blanket and laid down on the ground, arms behind his head. "Then maybe you're still human on the inside." She raised an eyebrow. "I'm not human." He smiled faintly in the dark. "Neither am I not anymore." And in that ruined city, under a burning sky, a human and a Mirikai warrior in the same fire. No longer enemies, not yet friends, just a people too tired to keep hating. Far above, in the orbiting sky, a silent drone blinked red and sent a signal to the fleet. Subject located. Human and Mirikai survivor. Begin extraction. The war wasn't over. Not yet, but maybe something else had just begun. Shadows in the smoke. Dawn crept slowly over the shattered city. Its light filtered through smoke and ash. What once had been silver towers now stood as hollow shells. Fires still burned in quiet corners. The war had ended here, but peace had not begun. Sailor awoke to the soft crackle of dying embers. Her blanket was damp with dew, her muscles stiff from sleeping on hard ground. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she saw him, Corin, sitting nearby, watching the horizon with tired eyes and a rifle across his lap. "You didn't run," he said without turning. She sat up slowly. "You didn't chain me." That was the test. Sailor stretched her sore arms, staring at him with cautious curiosity. "You humans are strange." Corin finally looked at her. "You haven't seen strange yet." He stood and walked toward a broken road that curved into a field of collapsed buildings. She followed without being asked. Something about him pulled her forward, even when her instincts screamed to run. "Where are we going?" she asked. "There's an old evac tunnel in the North District," he replied. "Might still be clear." "We need to get off this grid." "Why?" she said. "You said the war here is over." Corin glanced at the sky. "Not for us." They moved through the ruins quietly. Every step crunched broken glass and twisted metal. The city felt like a graveyard, not just for bodies, but for beliefs. Sailor had once marched through streets like this in triumph. Now she walked in silence, unsure of everything she once knew. As they passed a collapsed clinic, she spotted a shattered display on the wall. It flickered weakly, showing a propaganda image from the early war. A Mirikai soldier stood tall, human kneeling before him. "Funny how lies age quickly," she said. Corin looked at the screen and shrugged. "We had posters too. None of them showed what really happened." A distant rumble echoed through the air. Sailor turned quickly, her hand going to her side, before remembering she had no weapon. Corin knelt and pressed his hand to the ground. "Engines, low orbit, probably dropships. They're tracking us." She asked. He didn't answer, just moved faster. By midday, they reached what had once been a transport hub. Now, it was a jagged hole in the earth, smoke curling from its edges, but beneath the rubble, a narrow tunnel mouth still gaped open, partially hidden under collapsed beams. Corin pushed aside the debris. "This'll take us under the east wall, past the blast zone." Sailor paused. "And then we vanish," she frowned. "Just like that." He stared at her. "You got somewhere better to be." She didn't. They entered the tunnel. It was cold and wet, the walls lined with rusted pipes and cables. Small emergency lights blinked dimly every 10 meters. The silence here was thicker, more real. It felt like the war hadn't touched this place, or had been buried beneath it. "I still don't get you," Sailor said after a while. You saved me, fed me, freed me. Why? Corin didn't stop walking. Because I've done worse. I've burned villages, dropped charges on civilian transports, silenced people who begged for help. You want to know what changed me? She waited. One day, I found a boy, no older than 6, curled up in the wreckage of a ship we'd shot down. I aimed my rifle at him, standard protocol, but he just looked at me. Not with fear, with acceptance, like he knew. He went quiet for a while. I couldn't do it. I lowered my rifle. I thought maybe the others would understand. They didn't. You disobeyed, Sailor said softly. They called it treason. I escaped before they could make an example of me. Sailor swallowed hard. You're not what I expected from a human, he glanced back. You're not what I expected from a Mirakai. A strange silence fell between them. Not cold, not hostile, just full of thoughts. Neither of them knew how to say aloud. Then the tunnel lights flickered. Corin froze. He knelt, pulled out a small sensor disc from his pouch, and tossed it forward. It bounced twice and hovered in midair, blinking green. A moment later, it turned red. They're ahead of us, he muttered. Drones. Can we go back? Sailor asked. We're boxed in. Backtrack, and they'll track our heat signature. Stay here, and we wait to be found. She looked around. There must be a side path. There might be, he said. But it's risky, unmapped, might lead straight into a sewer or worse. She grinned despite the fear. We're already running through a dead city hunted by orbiting warships. What's worse, he smirked. Fair point. They moved down a service shaft barely wide enough to crawl. Rusted grates groaned beneath their weight. Rats, or something worse, skittered in the darkness. At one point, Sailor slipped and nearly fell into a shaft, but Corin caught her by the arm. His grip was firm. His hand was warm. She stared at it longer than she meant to. Thanks, she said. Don't mention it. When they finally emerged, they were in the underlayer of an old market district. Crates, bones, and rotting banners surrounded them. It smelled of rotten rust. But for now, they were safe. Sailor leaned against a broken pillar and looked at Corin. You said we vanish after this. But then what? I don't know, he admitted. Start over. Find somewhere quiet. Somewhere war forgot. She lowered her head. I don't think such a place exists anymore. Then we build one, he said. A strange warmth filled her chest. Hope. She hadn't felt that in a long time. But high above, in the black clouds, a hunter drone hovered silently. Its red eye focused on the underground entrance. Inside the orbiting cruiser Vanguard, a Mirakai officer barked. Target locked. Deploy the skinners. The captain turned to his comms. Bring the girl back alive. The human. I don't care what happens to him. Hunted through the hollow world market ruins were colder now. Dust floated like mist through shattered skylights, and the walls whispered with echoes of a city long dead. Sailor stood beneath a rusted archway, one hand on her side, the other clutching a broken pipe she'd found in the debris. Her sharp eyes swept the empty corridors ahead. She didn't trust silence anymore. Behind her, Corin was kneeling over a fallen shelf, scanning what remained of a long-dead food station. He opened a small storage crate and found an old ration tin, still sealed. He tossed it toward her. It's probably older than both of us, he said. Smells like it too, she replied, cracking the lid and sniffing carefully. They ate quietly. No fire, no warmth, only the cold metal floor beneath them and the rumble of distant thunder overhead. But it wasn't thunder, it was engines. Corin wiped his hands on his trousers and pulled out a small receiver clipped to his wrist. He tapped the screen. The signal jammer he'd set up earlier was still holding, just barely. They're scanning Bellogram now, he said. They know we went underground. Sailor's eyes narrowed. They'll send units. They already have. She stood and looked back the way they came. I should have known. The Mirakai don't forget loose ends. Neither does command, Corin replied. That drone last night, it tagged us. We're probably on 10 watch lists by now. Military defectors, interspecies fraternizers, war, criminals. Sailor gave a cold smile. We're quite the pair. Corin adjusted the straps on his gear and picked up his rifle. Come on, there's a freight line about 2 clicks north. Old Magrail access. If the tunnels haven't caved in, it might get us out of range. They moved fast through the hollow market. Shadows stretched long under flickering overhead lights. Strange shapes moved in the distance. Broken service bots dragging half-limbs, rats with metal eyes, scavenger drones feeding on old batteries. No. One spoke. When they reached the platform edge, Sailor stopped. A massive chasm opened before them, the transport tunnel. It ran in both directions, dark as space, with only the red flicker of emergency strips marking the rails. We jump? She asked. We climb, Corin said, pointing to a narrow maintenance ladder bolted to the side of the shaft. Sailor went first, gripping the rungs tight. Her hands ached from old wounds, but she said nothing. Halfway down, the metal groaned beneath her boots. She froze. Corin looked down. Keep going. It'll hold. I don't believe you. Neither do I at the bottom. They dropped onto the track bed. Rubble lined the floor. Ancient graffiti glowed faintly along the walls. Messages from survivors, soldiers, or ghosts. As they moved, Sailor asked, "Do you believe in peace?" Corin didn't answer right away. Then, "I believe in people. Some of them, anyway. You think they'll let us live?" He looked at her. "Not if they catch us." A sudden screech echoed through the tunnel. They both dropped into cover. Corin raised his rifle. Sailor gripped her pipe tight. From the far end of the tunnel came a low growl. Not mechanical, not human. Corin's eyes widened. "They sent Skinners." Sailor stiffened. "I thought those were decommissioned. They're not official." Off the record units. Cybernetic trackers. Half machine, half something else. The growl grew louder, followed by the rapid scrape of claws on metal. Corin pulled a small EMP grenade from his belt and whispered, "We don't fight it. We run." They sprinted. Behind them, the shadows erupted with motion. Something big slammed into the floor with a crunch. Metal limbs tore through debris. A monstrous shape followed, tall, hunched, with glowing blue eyes and serrated limbs that clicked with hunger. Sailor risked a glance back and saw 2 more Skinners dropping from the ceiling, crawling like spiders. "They're flanking us." Corin spun mid-run and hurled the EMP. A flash of white-blue light exploded behind them. The tunnel shook. Sparks flew. One Skinner collapsed in a heap of twitching limbs. The others staggered, but kept moving. They reached a service alcove and dove through. Corin slammed the hatch shut and dropped the locking bar. The room was tight and dark, filled with rusted consoles and a stairwell leading upward. "Go," he said. They climbed 3 levels until the door above opened into another ruin, a collapsed medical center. The air smelled like stale antiseptic and smoke. Sailor leaned against a cracked console, catching her breath. "How do they even know I'm still alive?" Corin was checking his scanner. "You're not just a soldier, are you?" She hesitated. "I was part of the Mirakai Royal Escort. I carried the House of Fire's command codes, but I broke protocol. Disobeyed an order to burn a human colony." He stared. "That makes you a traitor." She met his eyes. "I prefer survivor." Corin stepped closer. "Then they don't want you dead. They want you back." "I won't go," she said sharply. "Not again. Not ever." Suddenly, Corin froze. His scanner pulsed red. He turned toward the north wall. They're surrounding the building. Heat signatures, too. Many just drones. They brought soldiers. "How many?" Sailor asked. He didn't answer. Just loaded his rifle. She stepped beside him and picked up a piece of jagged rebar. Her fingers curled around it like a sword. Corin looked at her. "You sure?" She nodded. "You didn't leave me. I won't leave you." Through the cracks in the walls, they saw movement, figures in dark armor. Human and Mirakai, working together, guns raised. Eyes scanning. The war hadn't ended here after all. It had just gone quiet for a while, but now, the city was waking up again, and two fugitives, once enemies, stood side by side, not to fight a war for their people, but to fight for their right to choose a different future. No one left to obey. The old medical center groaned with pressure as enemy forces surrounded it. Outside, spotlights swept across shattered windows, scanning every crack and corridor. Through the broken wall, Sailor could see movement, black-armored, soldiers, rifles drawn, moving like shadows. Human, Mirakai, together, hunting them both. They want us alive, Corin muttered. Or at least they want you alive. She tightened her grip on the rebar in her hand. And you, he checked. The magazine of his rifle. I'm disposable. They crouched behind a fallen desk as footsteps echoed through the level above. Dust drifted from the ceiling like snow. Somewhere deeper in the building, a voice barked orders in clipped Mirakai. They'll breach soon, Sailor whispered. Yeah, Corin replied. But not quietly. They locked eyes, both knowing what came next. Not a final stand, but a final choice. Back stairwell leads to the lower access tunnels, Corin said. It's not safe, but it's not watched. You go, Sailor said. You'll move faster alone, but he just looked at her. We die alone. Or we live together. She blinked, surprised by how heavy those words felt. No one had ever said them to her before, not on her world, not in her army. Suddenly, the ceiling above them exploded inward. Debris rained down, the sound sharp and thunderous. Sailor rolled aside, coughing through the dust. Figures dropped from the hole. To soldiers in dark exo armor, visors glowing red, Corin reacted instantly, firing two shots. One soldier went down. The other raised a weapon. Sailor didn't think. She charged, slamming the rebar into the second soldier's chest. Sparks flew. The soldier staggered, but she didn't stop. She drove him back, screaming, striking again and again until the body dropped limp to the floor. Breathing hard, she looked at Corin. I thought they wanted me alive. Guess they changed their minds. More shouting above. They were out of time. Corin grabbed her hand. Come on. They ran through a half-collapsed hallway, dodging fallen beams and glass. Sirens echoed from the street outside. Somewhere, a drone passed by with a deep electronic hum. They reached the back stairwell. It spiraled down into pure darkness. No lights, Sailor whispered. Corin handed her a small glow tab. Save it for when it gets worse. They descended. Below, the air grew damp and sour. This was no longer a hospital. It was part of the city's skeleton. Thick pipes ran along the walls. Rust dripped like tears. It was a place no one had walked in years. We can't keep running, Sailor said finally. Then we stop, Corin replied. But we choose where. He scanned the dark corridor ahead. There's a maintenance hatch at the end. Might connect to the fusion exhaust line. Could get us to the Badlands outside city limits. Badlands? She asked. Dead zone, radiation, old mines. No patrols, just ghosts, Sailor swallowed. Better than prisons. They reached the hatch and pried it open. A hot gust of air hit their faces. It smelled like iron and fire. Below was a sloped tunnel, glowing orange from old fusion lines still alive after the city fell. They dropped down and moved quickly, knowing the soldiers weren't far behind. Sailor glanced sideways. You said something once. About choice. Yeah, you said you never had one. Corin kept walking. I was bred for war. Indoctrinated. Programmed to obey. It took years to realize that following orders wasn't the same as doing the right thing. She looked at him. So you ran? Not at first. I disobeyed once. Just once. Refused to bomb a refugee caravan because they didn't fit our scanner profiles. Command erased the report. But I wasn't erased. Not yet. They sent me back into the field, gave me a second chance, but it wasn't one. It was a warning. Sailor said nothing for a while. Then she reached into her sleeve and pulled out a chipped metal badge, a small sunburst symbol. You know what this is? He looked at it. Royal Command emblem. I wasn't just a guard. I was born into it. My family served the Mirakai line for 6 generations. Loyalty was in our blood. But you broke it. I did, she said softly. Because one day I walked into a village with my squad. They told us it was a resistance base, ordered us to purge it. But inside were only civilians, women, children, injured. And one of them handed me a broken pendant, human, I think, and said, if you kill us, then tell your gods we died in peace. I couldn't do it, and your squad. They did. I tried to stop them. My captain shot me in the shoulder and left me to die. Said I'd forgotten my oath. Corin stopped walking. He reached out and took the sunburst from her hand. You didn't forget anything, he said. You remembered what matters. She didn't answer. But something loosened in her chest, a knot that had been there for too long. Suddenly, his scanner beeped, loud and sharp. They're right behind us. He spun and fired down the tunnel, hitting a light drone that had crawled through the hatch. It exploded in a burst of sparks. More were coming. We need cover, Corin said. Ahead, the tunnel widened into a massive exhaust chamber. High ceilings, massive fans, control terminals, and long-forgotten scaffolding. It looked like a furnace. Temple. They ran into the chamber and climbed onto a platform above. Corin set a charge near the hatch. If they follow, this will slow them down. Sailor crouched beside him. What then? He looked up at the vent system above. There's an old access shaft. If we time it right, it'll launch us toward the eastern edge of the city. Fast, dangerous, probably a one-way ride. She smiled grimly. Sounds like everything we've done so far. The hatch below exploded inward. Soldiers poured in, shouting. Corin hit the detonator. Fire roared across the floor, swallowing the first wave of troops in a flash of heat and smoke. Then he grabbed Sailor's hand. Now, they climbed, faster than breath. At the top of the shaft, wind howled like a beast. Corin pried open the emergency release lever. The fans stuttered, then spun to life. Hold on, he shouted. The force caught them, and they flew. Through the vent system, through fire and wind, through darkness into cold air and broken sky. They tumbled across the rooftop of a ruined tower, coughing and gasping. But they were alive, and for now, still free. Ghosts of the past walked to the world outside the tower. Was nothing but wind, ash, and sky. Corin and Sailor lay still for a moment, gasping. Their bodies ached from the force of the blast vent. Clothes torn, faces scraped, but they were alive. There was something. The rooftop beneath them was half collapsed, jagged like a broken tooth. Below, the dead city stretched out in every direction. A sea of silence, broken only by the faint hum of far-off patrol engines. Corin sat up first. He winced, holding his side. You good? He asked. Elor nodded, then coughed. Think I left part of my lung back in the fan. He smiled a little, then offered her a hand. Come on. We can't stay here. They climbed down the side of the tower, slipping through old stairwells and broken elevator shafts. The building had once been a communications hub. Walls lined with shattered screens, control panels burned from EMPs or sabotage. It felt like walking through a skeleton. What is this place? She asked. Used to be called Echo Spire, Corin replied. Ran comms across the orbital fleet grid. Then the Mirakai took it out in the first wave. I thought your people did that. He shook his head. We blamed each other for years. Never mattered who fired first. The fire just never stopped. At the ground level, they pushed through a rusted service door and entered the edge of the outer fade, the transition zone between city ruins and the wastelands beyond. The change was immediate. No trees, no birds, no voices, just dust, rock, and twisted metal structures that leaned like forgotten monuments. The ground was cracked and scorched, as if the planet itself had given up hope. Wind carried the sound of distant thunder, But it wasn't a storm. It was machines, still hunting. How far to the dead zone? Sailor asked. Maybe 2 days' walk, Corin replied. If we don't get tagged. They moved through the ash fields slowly, staying low, using wreckage as cover. The landscape was littered with bones and broken weapons, war graves without names, no flags, no glory, just silence. At night, they found shelter in the remains of an old transport crawler. Corin patched their wounds as best he could, using what supplies remained in his kit. Sailor winced but said nothing as he cleaned the cut on her shoulder. You, always so quiet when you hurt, he asked. I was trained not to show weakness, she replied. He looked at her. Hurting doesn't make you weak. She met his eyes, softer now. You think there's really a future for people like us? I think, he said slowly, the future depends on people like us. She looked away, unsure how to carry that. Wait. They slept in shifts. Somewhere deep in the night, Corin heard movement outside. He reached for his rifle, silent as a shadow, and stepped out. A shape stood at the edge of the crawler's lights. Humanoid, not armored. A woman. Her skin was pale, her eyes bright silver. She wore a patched cloak, and on her shoulder was the old symbol of the Mirakai royal crest. Sailor, the figure said calmly. So it's true. You lived. Sailor stepped out from behind Corin. Her entire body went still. Tirin. The woman nodded. It's been a long time, cousin. Corin frowned. Cousin. Sailor stepped forward, tense. You led the purge. You ordered my death. Tyrion's voice didn't change. You disobeyed, refused a royal command. That made you a traitor. But now everything's changed. I made a choice, Sailor snapped. One I still stand by. I'm not here to fight you, Tyrion said. I came alone, no unit, no weapons. Corin kept his rifle up anyway. You'll forgive me if I don't believe that. Tyrion held up her hands. I came to offer you a way out. A third option. Sailor narrowed her eyes. What kind of option? Tyrion stepped closer. The Empire is fracturing. Your defiance inspired more than whispers. Others followed. There's a new faction forming. One that believes the war was a mistake. That peace can be restored, but only if people like you survive. Sailor hesitated. You're serious? I wouldn't have crossed the Fade to find you if I wasn't. Corin didn't lower his rifle. And I'm just supposed to trust this? You don't have to, Tyrion replied. I'm not asking for your loyalty. Just your attention. She pulled a small device from her pouch. Flat, black, glowing, faint blue. This is a relay beacon. If you activate it, a ship will come. Not military, not Empire. A rogue vessel, protected by both human defectors and Mirakai rebels. They'll take you off-world. You'll be safe. Sailor stared at the beacon in her cousin's hand. She remembered fire, screams, the feeling of betrayal when Tyrion gave the order that nearly killed her. Why now? Sailor asked, why help me after everything? Tyrion's expression cracked, just a little, because I saw what came after you left. I followed orders, killed villages, burned the innocent, and it didn't bring peace. It brought silence, empty silence. Sailor stepped back. Give me the beacon, then leave. Tyrion nodded, handed over the device, and turned to walk back into the wasteland. Before disappearing into the shadows, she looked back once. Sailor, don't waste the second chance I didn't take. Then she was gone. Corin lowered his rifle, but only slightly. You believe her? He asked. I believe she's broken, Sailor replied. And sometimes, that makes people tell the truth. They stood together, the beacon glowing faint in Sailor's hand. One press, and everything would change. Corin looked at her. You think this is the end of the road? She looked toward the horizon, black mountains in the distance, and stars blinking through holes in the smoke above. No, she said. I think this is the start of something bigger. She turned to him. But I'm not going unless you come with me. Corin's eyes locked with hers. "I didn't survive all this just to watch you leave." They both smiled, tired but real. And, somewhere above, far beyond the haze, a silent ship turned its course, drawn by a signal never meant to exist.